Great. Welcome everyone to the Universal Health Plan Governance Board Executive Director Hiring Meeting. My name is Helen Belanca. I'm the chair of the Universal Health Plan Governance Board, and we're excited to begin this process. Today we're going to be hearing from Courtney about our recruitment update, getting some information on the numbers that have applied, and then we're going to be reviewing and finalizing our interview questions. And then we're going to go into executive session to discuss some of the applicants. And that will be the total of our meeting. We won't be making any decisions in the executive session today. So it's just for our information to continue on. And I checked with Katie before, but I'll confirm again. Is there any public comment today?
No public comment, but just for the record, I will take roll call. So we'll start with Helen Belanca.
Here.
Judy Richardson.
Here.
Thank you. That does give us quorum, but your third committee member, Bruce Goldberg, will be joining at 2 p.m. So we can go ahead and get started without him.
Great. So I will turn it over to Courtney to give us a recruitment update.
Great. Thank you. So for the Universal Health Plan Governance Board Executive Director recruitment, that position opened January 29th. I believe, is that right? Hold on, let me pull up my notes here. I've got multiple screens. Sorry, January 21st. And then that closed February 9th. We had a total of 55 applicants.
Wow.
Out of those 55 applicants, we had 3 who did not meet the minimum qualifications for that position, and they have been notified. And then we had 7 of those candidates who did not attach the required documents, the cover letter that you indicated you wanted for this position as well. And so those candidates have been notified. You have a final 45 candidates ready for review in this recruitment. The sourcing was completed on it. Your candidates are applying from all of those different areas. So I see it as a very successful recruitment, and excited about the number of applicants that did apply for the position.
Fantastic.
Yes. So any questions about the recruitment data or anything else that I can answer for you? Otherwise, I believe we can jump into the interview questions and deciding those. Okay, so I have the interview questions, and I will go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see here. The one I want to share. Just to confirm, can you see my screen?
Not yet, but it's loading. Oh, there it is. Yes.
Perfect. All right. So these are the interview questions that were actually used in the last recruitment that we did for the executive director. And so there is a total of 10 questions, with the final one being, do you have any questions for us? And then I did include here as well alternative interview questions if you find that you are wanting to seek out those, and identifying 2 rounds. I know at this point in time, from the last discussion that we had, we indicated that interviews would potentially take place on February 18th, which is in 8 days. And so if we are moving forward with that, we can establish kind of, do we do 1 round or move to 2 rounds of interviews, and kind of make that decision on which rounds the interview questions belong to. So let's just walk through them and indicate whether or not you like the question, would like to remove the question or edit the question, and then we'll kind of work from there. So the first one is, tell us what about this position interests you the most. If hired, what are some goals you might have for the first 30, 60, 90 days in this position?
I like this question. It gives us a nice introduction to what they're going for.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah, I think it's interesting to ask about the 30, 60, 90 days and see, how their priorities would change. Yeah, I don't have any edits for this one.
Second question, please give us your general sense of the recommendations made by the Joint Task Force on the Universal Health Care. And then we can provide a copy of this to the candidates before their interview, if you would choose. Which recommendations do you think are the most feasible / least feasible? What barriers do you see to acting on / implementing those recommendations?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm happy with that one. I don't have any edits on that one. I think that's really a crucial one because it gives us a sense of, that, I mean, this is the purpose of our work, is to kind of take what the task force has done and sort of, actualize it. So yeah, I think that's a good question.
Agree.
A lot of what and this question too really helps indicate which candidates are really almost studying in a sense before they get to the interview, but really like invested in learning more about what's been going on in the past and then kind of their role in the future. So great. So Senate Bill 1089 is quite specific with the task the Universal Health Plan Governance Board must undertake to develop a comprehensive plan to administer and finance a universal health system. Describe, in your view, the division of work between the executive director and the staff and that of the board members themselves in completing those tasks.
It kind of gets to their impression of the role, the purview and scope of the role itself. I mean, I wouldn't expect all applicants to really know, but maybe they'll have a sense of what their hope and their intention would be bringing to this role.
I'm curious, since you used these questions before, like, were you part of the original interview, Courtney, for the original applicants?
Some of the interviews. So in the previous recruitment, we had 3 rounds of interviews. I sat on the first round was done through VidCruiter, so it was a virtual interviewing process. And I did review those. I was not a panel member, but I just wanted to make sure all the candidates were able to complete their interviews at the time. And then on the round 2, I was the facilitator for the interview. So I did sit on them. Again, I was not a panel member.
Right.
But I did get to see the interview. And then the third one I was not, which is actually where a majority of these questions did come from. So I did not see the answers in these with these questions specifically.
Yeah, I was just asking because sometimes, you develop a slate of questions, and then as you interview people, you realize like which questions are getting you the most information, or which ones are sort of the richer conversations, and which ones sort of people either don't connect with or don't really understand, or like Judy was just saying, maybe don't know enough about the role or the relationships to sort of answer effectively. So any feedback about like the, how useful these questions were, or how productive they were, would be great. Because I mean, they seem great, but like Judy said, like this is one where you're like, the role between the division of tasks between an executive director and the board is a really tricky balance. And this is a very interesting board, different than other governance boards, I think, because we're trying to create something new. Maybe I would preface this question by saying that, so we're called a governance board, but currently we're not governing anything, right? And so it is this governance board is sort of unique among governance boards in the sense that we are trying to be creative and be innovative and trying to build something that doesn't currently exist. And yet it's a volunteer board. And so the relationship between the executive director and staff and the board, I think, is a bit different than a traditional relationship between those entities. And just maybe I would just say, like, do you have any thoughts about how that might work, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to get at a little bit that it's more of a creative board and more of an innovative board, and so that relationship needs to flex, I think, a little bit differently And I think the weight of the work on a full-time executive director and staff with a volunteer board for that kind of work is a little bit different.
Yeah, I do believe as well with these interview questions, when we were first looking at the recruitment for the executive director, it was identified that it would be very easy for the executive director position to essentially take on a lot of work, and it's very easy to get into, I guess, like the weeds of the body of the work. And so one of the key skills that they were looking for was somebody that can essentially keep the work and body of work moving while still knowing what's kind of going on, but not getting maybe sidetracked. And so a lot of that was like, how do we make sure that these candidates are going to be future thinking and keep driving the work? And so that was kind of the main skill that they were looking at with these questions. And so I don't know if that offers some of that insight of why these questions are being asked in that way, and maybe why we want to edit some of them.
Yeah, I really like the way you just framed that, Courtney. Like, so, yeah, something that alludes to, we need the board's input because the board is driving strategy. The role of the board is the strategy moving forward. And yet we need somebody to sort of understand the vision of the board and yet keep the work driving forward without getting too mired in the details. And that can be sort of a tricky relationship. So let's see. So this is for some reason that first line, Senate Bill 1089, is quite specific. That the UHB needs to undertake to develop a comprehensive plan. So I don't know that it's because it's specific as much as because it's creative and innovative that we're trying to create something that doesn't exist.
I would cut that whole sentence. I'm interested in their perspective of the relationship between an executive director and a board. And we can ask a follow-up too. I mean, there are lots of different kinds of relationships, how that's defined, right? There's like school boards, so school board sets policy and the superintendent does the work. There's governance board where, it's a different relationship. Then there's this kind of board, exactly like Helen's describing. We're like a design and innovation board who the board itself doesn't even get in the weeds. The subcommittees really get in the weeds. We direct those guys. So I'm interested in the applicant's perspective on these relationships and how they flex or can flex, and how, you know what I'm saying? How, if they are comfortable with a dynamic relationship between a board and executive director.
Yeah. So where you are, Courtney, so in completing the innovative and dynamic tasks inherent in creating a new system, something like that.
Oh, sorry, innovative and dynamic
tasks inherent in trying to design and implement a universal health plan. Yeah, something like
and implementation
in the design and implementation of a universal health plan, yeah. It's an IMPLE, implement. IMPLE, implementation, MENTA, yeah.
Oh, still wrong. I always say every time everybody watches me type inherent in the design and implementation of
a universal health plan for Oregonians. So does that capture it, Judy, you think?
Yeah, thank you.
Completing, yeah, so it gets at that. Describe in your view the division of work between the ED and staff and that of the universal board themselves in completing
innovative
because it's tasks, so the innovative and dynamic tasks inherent in the, I don't know, that's a little bit chunky. Let's see. Division of work between the ED and staff. Can we get rid of the themselves? And members themselves can both go. So it's just the relationship between the ED and staff and the board in completing the innovative and dynamic work. It says change tasks to work. Just makes it a little less chunky, I think, and inherent in the, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, okay, that's a little better. Okay. This is a tough question. This is 4.
It is.
Yeah.
I will say, you know, in 3 rounds, round 1, 2 to 3, right? They progressively get more difficult and more in depth. You know, I think like one of the first questions we asked in round 1 was like, describe your management, your leadership style. And then it gets to a point where it's like, now you're taking that management and leadership style and how are you applying that to this specific body of work. So, yeah.
So what is this question really about? Is it about asking the candidate, you have maybe a difficult message from the governor or the legislature and you need to carry it forward? Because the content is a little bit, it's dated, right? Because we have new charges now, we've got a whole different political environment. What are we really trying to get from the candidate in this question?
I think that's a question to turn back over to you.
I don't know, Judy, I kind of do think that I like that this one's specific to what's going on in Oregon because I mean, we've currently got like 97% of people covered in Oregon right now. And this is a universal health plan intended to cover everybody. And we are pretty close to covering everybody. Certainly it's important to get that final 3%. But I think I'm guessing, but I think the governor's point was we've already done so much work and we're so close to universal coverage. What is this going to add? How is this going to, you know, of all the reform efforts that we've done so far, like what is this, how are we getting closer to our goal of getting coverage for everybody? What changes with this? Are we just kind of, you know, sort of reiterating some of the work that's been done before, or what makes this work distinct and important to fund separate from all of the expansion work we've done already?
Okay.
But I wonder about I don't know if we should ask about, you know, how it plays out but it could be part of this too, you know, sort of, you know, Oregon's already had pretty innovative work with expanding coverage. And we are now operating in an environment where even that, you know, coverages can be threatened, you know, in terms of federal funding. You know, how, you know, I'm not sure how you would transition that.
So are you saying you like this question number 4?
I like it.
I'm fine with it.
So I would say, can the governor urge the legislature to provide clearer direction on the board on its charge? So I don't like the last question of it, but so I like all the setup and then say, how would you describe the importance of this work in advancing Oregon's healthcare coverage and reform efforts?
Oh, that helps, Helen. Thanks. That makes sense to me now.
So how would you describe the importance of this work in advancing?
In advancing Oregon's efforts toward universal coverage, and in advancing Oregon's work in health reform and I lost it. Work advancing Oregon's efforts toward universal coverage and healthcare reform. I would do towards universal coverage and healthcare reform. Yeah, like. Yeah.
Okay, great. Question 5, what does it mean for you to have a commitment to diversity? How have you demonstrated that commitment, and how would you see yourself demonstrating it as the executive director of the Universal Health Plan Governance Board?
I like it. I think that one's good.
Question 6, Senate Bill 1089 expressly directs the board to work collaboratively with the public and with several stakeholders, including the 9 federally recognized tribes in Oregon, existing boards and commissions concerned with healthcare and health insurance, healthcare providers, hospitals, insurers, and coordinated care organizations. What would you do / what would be your approach to ensure collaboration across those groups in the development of a plan to administer and finance the universal health system?
I think it's a good question. I suggest changing the word stakeholders to interested parties or groups.
And I would do multiple instead of several, with multiple interested parties instead of, because that's a lot of them.
That work?
Yes.
Okay, question 7. How would you ensure that the plan? Nope. Wait, the plan to plan. I think this needs to be removed. How would you ensure that the plan to administer and finance a universal health system overcomes inequities to healthcare access, quality, and outcomes due to race, age, income, or geography?
It's important.
I'm not sure about this one. I would maybe preface it by saying a universal health plan doesn't guarantee universal access to care. Kind of frame it that way. Because it sounds like we're saying, you know, everybody's covered. So how would you make sure everybody's covered? But just because we have a plan to cover everybody doesn't, universal health plan doesn't guarantee equitable access to needed healthcare services. Just as a little preface, how would you ensure that the plan overcomes inequities? Yeah, I like it. I like it better that way. Just kind of set it up, just because, you know.
Yep. I love question number 8. I think that's a really good one.
I am a big fan of a Tell Us About a Time. I think that those really showcase what has happened in previous work experience and give really great insight. So yes, tell us about a time you had to use your negotiating skills to bring about a resolution that was in everyone's best interest. Question, is there any additions that you want to make to 8?
No, that's a great one.
So question 9, the executive director will have 2 direct reports, an administrative specialist and an operations policy analyst. What qualities would you look for in hiring for each of those positions? As you well know, these positions are now filled. They were not filled at that time. So I would probably recommend making some edits to this question, if not removing it altogether.
Yeah, maybe something about management, delegation style, leadership style, you know.
Let me take a look here.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we
like
have,
number 4. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How do you go about developing the people you manage? Please supply a current example. I'm going to replace that with question 9. Great.
Or you can leave the part about having 2 direct reports.
Oh, I love that even better. There we go.
Yeah.
And then we will remove that. I'm going to say provide instead of supply. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Great.
And
then
it should be manage instead of manager.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. And then the last one is, do you have questions for us? Which really does showcase a lot of interest in the position. We always hope that candidates are asking questions to engage the panel and learn more about the role. So that's always how we choose to end it at DCBS.
Yeah, that's a great one.
So this is essentially the first set of interview questions. Now I'm going to ask, do you want to look at additional questions for a potential interview happening later, or are we just establishing the ones for the first interview that will happen with the candidates.
So these alternative ones are not optional to use during the first round. These are ones we would use during a potential second round. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. When they're called alternative, it makes me feel like we could also pick and choose from these if we feel like we want to ask them of the current candidate, but maybe they should be like second round interview questions.
Yeah, so with interviewing at the state, we identify the interview questions before interviews are sent for invitation. And the reason being is we say, you know, these are the interview questions that will be asked by the panel. There won't be additional interview questions asked to the candidate. This is for equity purposes. So every candidate goes to the interview and interacts with the same interview questions across the board.
Yes.
Obviously the difference in the interviews mostly will obviously be the answers, but then the what questions you have for us, because that's when the candidate is engaging with the panel with the questions that they have. But we always like to establish, here's the set of 10 questions every candidate's going to get. You shouldn't be surprised by any other interview questions. The panel is allowed to ask clarifying questions. So if a candidate starts speaking about some previous work experience that is unclear, that you can ask for some expansions on those examples. But these alternative interview questions would be ones to either replace the existing ones and or use at a different interview at a different time.
That's an interesting point. So if they say something that intrigues us and we just want to ask further questions about it, that's totally fine. Like, how did you respond to that? Or what was your solution to that? Like, so we can go off script a little bit as long as they're in the context of these 10 questions.
Yes. And you will find too, candidates sometimes forget to answer maybe the additional part to the question. And so a lot of panels will say, and what was the outcome of that? You know, because they're trying to prompt the second part to the interview question. So you can always seek clarity on any question that a candidate gives.
This is just my perspective, Courtney, but I wonder if we can wait to define second interview questions if we have a group that we've interviewed and we know we want to invite back for a second interview, then we know something about that group. And so we may want to design our questions around that. I mean, they would all still be clearly the same standard questions, they'd all get them, but then we know something about their background that we might want to explore a little bit further for all of them. Is that appropriate?
It is. We've had instances where we don't want to design interview questions solely based for like one specific candidate. However, we have found that there's an interviews taking place and we realize we did not ask anything in this specific area and we really actually need that established for this position. So a new interview question would be created for all candidates, again, for that equitable purpose of, you know, maybe we really needed to ask about budget and how to, you know, hold to a budget. So that interview question is created. We can't, again, create a interview question solely based for one specific candidate, as long as it's asked to all.
You know, that brings up a really good point. We don't have any question in here about healthcare financing. And I think sort of so you're the budget thing brought it up, and managing the budget of this board is a thing, and perhaps we should ask about it. But what it brought to mind to me was healthcare financing is insanely complex, and a sort of a basic sort of familiarity of how healthcare is financed seems like a really crucial piece. I would be interested in hearing from candidates about what their experience and knowledge is of healthcare financing. I don't know if it needs any
Just
more.
ask it like that. Can you tell us about your knowledge and experience in healthcare financing?
Yeah. Tell us about your knowledge and experience of healthcare financing. I think that would be really telling.
Okay, I'm thinking maybe we put it as like our third question, if you're good with that.
Sure.
And please remind me how you want to ask that question so I can take that.
Tell us about your knowledge and experience with healthcare financing.
Okay.
we may get sufficient information with the first round of interviews that we don't feel like we need to invite them back for a second interview. We have a small group that we want to recommend to the board just based on the first interviews.
That would be great with 45 potential candidates. It might be like, we might, if we got to whittle them down to, 5 or 6, and then had a second round where we tried to figure out who was standing out among those. If we only had like 10 or 12 applicants, I would think that would be more likely, but yay, we have a lot of applicants. I'm really excited about that. And it would be nice to have a second look if we get to that point.
So it sounds like we're feeling good about this. And what I'll do is, instead of just final round interview questions, I'm just going to put interview questions because we'll determine what will need to happen later. But we at least have established these are the interview questions for the interview to take place, determining later which candidates will go to that interview. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I save this document. I will finalize this, make sure to remove all of the track changes, and Katie, I will get that to you.
Excellent. Katie, has Bruce joined us?
Not yet.
Just as a logistics question, if we enter executive session before he joins us, can he still hop in?
Yes, he can.
Okay.
Before we go, are we going to finalize next steps at this point before we enter executive session?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. So, Courtney, do you want to walk us through next steps?
Yes. So, what we are going to do is we're going to review the 45 candidates that have met the minimum qualifications. They will now be screened for the desired attributes and or requested skills. And those will be using the applicant selection log. This applicant selection log, in fact, I don't have one I can share right now, but I will be able to pull that up. But the applicant selection log has 5 different categories for placing the candidates into these categories. The first one being highly, that is the most desired candidate to move to the next round. The next one is substantially, then moderately, then possibly, and then not. So those are the 5 essentially columns that we will go through each of the candidates through and put them in one of those categories. And then after that, we'll use that to help determine which candidates would move forward to the next or to the interview. If you move one candidate in one of the columns, you have to move all of the candidates in that column. So for instance, if I have one candidate in highly and another candidate in highly, both of those people will move to the interview. And then if you go deeper into that applicant selection, so let's say we want to move everyone in the highly category and the substantially category, you can do that. So that's how the applicant selection log works. We also use veterans preference points, and you do have a candidate that does have veterans preference points, and I will walk through that specific candidate. Essentially what happens is a candidate that has veterans preference points, if they have 5 points, they move up 1 category. If they have 10 veterans points, they move up 2 categories, and they are included into that selection process of who's going to move forward. Once we'll have that all filled out for recommendation. And then I had, based off of the last meeting, that February 18th was the identified date for interview. I'm not sure if that date is still correct. So we will need to look at what day we would actually want to hold the interview for the candidates.
What day of the week is that?
I believe that is a Tuesday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that still works for me. Do we need to decide that now?
No, not essentially now, because we actually don't know how many candidates are moving forward yet.
Yeah.
And so once we finalize the candidates moving forward, I would revisit that date and make sure that it works for everyone. You will also need to decide how long. I would say with 10 interview questions, you'll probably be looking at about a 50-minute interview. And then those 10 minutes are going to be in between for the panel to take a break. And then establishing as well whether or not you would like those candidates to get those interview questions that you just established in advance. You have the option to give them 24 hours in advance, an hour in advance, or no advance.
And that we need to decide that now, or we're just at some point.
Yeah, at some point.
Okay.
It seems from an equity perspective, we should provide them with the questions in advance because this is a public meeting and we just reviewed what questions we're going to ask.
Very true.
But as far as how much, I don't know.
The options were 1 hour, 24 hours, or a week. Is that right?
24 hours, 1 hour, or none.
Or not? Oh, 24.
Yeah, not at all. And if you would like to give them even more time, you actually you can choose to do so. Those are just the most popular options for hiring managers to choose. You can also let me know if there's any other resources you would like me to provide to the candidates. I think we had you had seen in one of the interview questions that they gave a copy of the recommendations by the Joint Task Force in advance to that interview, just to help candidates prepare. So we can establish too any sort of documents that you would like to provide them in advance to their interview as well.
It seems like to me when you're contacting a candidate and letting them know we would like them to interview, it might be the nice time to say, and these are the questions we're going to ask you, and here's our referencing document.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. I'm assuming these folks are all busy people and we want them to be prepared. We're not trying any gotcha question. I don't know, Helen, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. It makes it easy because then I'm contacting them right then and there. And I think candidates really do appreciate, having the interview questions in advance, the time to prepare for an interview. And I think it gives everyone that's on the panel an opportunity to engage in a really great interview because their candidates are showing up with the ready material, ready to answer the questions. And so I've just found that those interviews tend to be a lot better than the ones where they're kind of having to think on the spot right away with maybe some limited information.
Judy, I'm wondering, aside from the task force recommendations, if there's other materials we want to give. We have a lot. Of course, they're all on our website. I wonder if just, advising interviewees that if they're interested in any of our other documents, we post all of our values and principles document, our preliminary structure, our work plan. Those things are all posted on our website. So maybe we could just direct people to the website to review any additional materials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can include the website into the invitation. So that way, say, here's the website for any information that you would like to research before showing up to the interview.
Yeah, that would be great.
Great. Are we ready to initiate executive session?
I think so, unless Courtney, you have anything else?
I do not have anything else.
Will we be, we won't have anything else to discuss when we come back from executive session, correct?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. So then members of the public, just so you know, we will be coming back to adjourn, but there won't be anything more discussed. So people don't have to feel like they need to hang around. But Helen, I will let you take it away.
Okay, great. Well, it is now 2:09 on my clock. And the Executive Director Hiring Committee will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660, Section 2A and F, which allows the committee to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or an individual agent, and consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience will be placed in a Zoom waiting room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room, but we will then be adjourning the meeting at that time.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause recording and put members of the public into the Zoom waiting room, and I'll let you know when we can resume. Okay, you are good to go.
We are back in public session, and I am just here to say that we are needing to extend the executive session as we have a lot of candidates that we are still reviewing. So we are going to extend our executive session beyond 3 o'clock. Thank you, Court.
Thank you both.
Okay, Helen, if you want to go ahead and close it out for us.
Okay, we are back and now out of executive session. So we're back in the public session of the Universal Health Plan Governance Board Executive Director Hiring Committee. And we have reached the conclusion of this meeting. We will be posting another meeting for later this week to finish our work. So stay tuned for that. I just want to publicly say thank you so much to Courtney and the team at DCBS for helping us with this recruitment process. It's very well organized and efficient. We appreciate that. And we will see you all at our next meeting. Thank you.